Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final session we have for you in the Retrofit seminars at Future Build 2023. A very warm welcome. There's some faces in this audience that have been here to a number of sessions so far. And this is sort of all avenues are sort of led up to this big one, because the big question we've all got is, are we ready? Are we ready to deliver retrofit at scale? And I should have, when I wrote this program, added good quality retrofit at scale, but that's what we mean by retrofit at scale. So are we ready? Are we ready as an industry? Are we ready as customers, clients, homeowners? Are we ready in terms of government policy? Are we ready in terms of quality assurance? Are we ready in terms of materials? Because there's no question now that given the energy crisis and some government policies, there's a lot of money about to come into the retrofit space in both domestic retrofit and non-domestic retrofit. So we need to be ready. Are we ready? So what we're going to start off with, this is not a presentation-based session, it's a discussion-based session. And we've got a series of questions we're going to run through. Some of the panel are going to pose some questions to each other. We're going to ask you for questions as we go. We're not going to save them up to the end, okay? So I will at various points come to you, so have your questions ready in your head, okay, put to the panel. We're just going to start with a brief reflection from each member of the panel I'm going to introduce in a sec. With that question, broadly, are we ready? What would their assessment of our readiness be? Now, it's a panel that most people I've known very well for a very long time, so I think I know what they think. Well, it'll be interesting to see. We'll introduce from the far end. So Richard Francis, who's a consultant and advisor in the world of commercial real estate and sustainability and retrofit. And I'm going to try and pronounce your company's name correctly. Monomoy. Could you correct that when you have the microphone, please? Ian Hutchcroft from Energiesprong UK. For those of you who don't know, Energiesprong have sort of been pushing the boundaries of off-site-led retrofit and all sorts of amazing stuff, innovative about retrofit for several years now, and we need way more of this stuff to happen. So that's Ian Hutchcroft. Phil Mason from Trustmark. Trustmark is the quality mark for the sector, for the retrofit sector, and Phil and the team have been building a quality assurance regime to ensure that we are delivering to the right standards and protecting consumers from poor practices. Russell Smith, how many hats do you wear, Russ? I've lost count. Russ is the Managing Director of Parity Projects, a leading software company in the retrofit space. Russell's been at this for nearly 20 years, I think, and set up Retrofit Works, which is a cooperative, I'm sure we'll hear more about, and has recently launched the National Retrofit Hub, which is a really important new development that we'll hear more about. Stuart Fairlie from Elmhurst, one of the leading accreditation schemes in the quality assurance regime, so supporting people like domestic energy assessors and retrofit coordinators around the world of energy efficiency and energy assessment. And last but not least, Sarah Edmonds. I've got that right. Thank you. What a relief, because you're the one person we don't know each other well. But and again, someone who wears many hats and pushing the boundaries of great design and great retrofit. So without further ado, I'm going to come to you first, Sarah, if I may, to reflect on, are we ready to deliver retrofit at scale?
No. I say that with a caveat, though. I think that what I would just first like to say about it is that for me and for a lot of people, I think retrofit isn't a technical problem. There's so many incredible people here today who have so many different solutions and combinations of solutions. The sheer knowledge that is amongst the panelists alone, and all of you here who I'm sure are in the room, it isn't about the technical bit really. It is much more to do with the fact that we have a crisis of trust. And that is what is preventing us from actually getting to the scale of which we need to deliver retrofit. Now, when I say trust, it's not just trust between homeowners or people who can afford to do it and the contractors and not having that trust. It's trust across the board. And in order to try and address this crisis of trust, what we really, really need to do is make space for the voice of the resident, make space for the voice of the occupant, and to understand how, with all these great technical solutions that we have, how do we make them stick? There's a role for the local authorities, there's a role for government, there's a role for everybody, and actually, frankly, we need all of it, all of the time. And I'm really glad that David mentioned the National Retrofit Hub, because I do think that that's an opportunity whereby all these voices can come together and that we can start to make space for all the different voices that we need to have. So my position on that is clear. No, we're not ready to retrofit at scale just yet, because we really, really need to get to grips with this crisis of trust. But there is huge potential for us to be able to deliver at scale. And that's what we need to do. I'm just going to tell a little bit. Yes, I do wear many hats. Today I'm here with my Built Environment Smarter Transformation hat on. So Built Environment Smarter Transformation, one of the innovation centres in Scotland. They used to be Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, but have changed the name to Built Environment Smarter Transformation, precisely because we know the reach is beyond any one particular place. I just want to give you a brief overview of our retrofit programme. So our retrofit programme is there to champion best practice for retrofit. Now, I just thought it was useful to have this image because it shows what actually happens in the Innovation Centre. Retrofit training rigs, we've got people coming through the door where we do the physical training as well as the sort of outreach and engagement and connection. So I won't read through all of these because we've only got a couple of minutes, and I'm sure it's going to be much more interesting hearing from you and your questions. So we're also there to enable the industry, support academia. We're funded through various different programs, again, all that you can reach there. But what's interesting is we have the program that covers three main streams: passive house, retrofit, and fabric and structure. So we're trying to understand how we need to address the skills gap, really, in this space, but also bringing together different voices. So right now, and we'll come to that, we've got our Young Persons Guarantee that's running at the moment, which is engaging with much, much younger audiences than we're used to seeing here. So there's just we can see who we're working with, some of the organisations mentioned here that we're trying to just share. We don't want to take up the space. I mean, it was something that Russell said at the National Retrofit Hub. We're not interested in taking up the space of other people. We're interested in accelerating and amplifying the work that other people are doing. Just a couple of stats on the kind of numbers that we've seen over the last year coming through our low carbon learning programme. You can see the numbers for yourself. You can access our low carbon learning programme. If you go to our website, you can sign up to the Low Carbon Learning Hub. You just need to register, and then you get this huge amount of knowledge, actually from some of these providers mentioned here who co-authored some of the work, and you can just treat yourself to some upskilling for free. So that's that. What's next? We've got these things mentioned here. I mentioned the Low Carbon Learning Programme, which is about the next generation. I think that's also really important. We need to reframe what the roles are in retrofit for the next generation to come through so that it meets their need to be involved in something that is purpose-driven, and that's what we have to do. So that's it from me. I think I'm very happy to take questions as we go.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. So, same question, this time to Richard. Are we ready to retrofit at scale?
Thank you, David. It's nice to be here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Richard Francis, and I run a company called Monomoy. And my work is almost 90% plus in the commercial sector. And so, in opposition to Sarah, I would say that commercially, for commercial real estate, that is, the appetite for retrofit is unprecedented. It's driven by net zero carbon, which I hope we talk a lot about today. Net zero carbon is unlike anything I've seen in sustainability in 3 decades. It's a concept which is globally understood. It's not a technical term. It's used to sell residences in places like the New York Times and the Washington Post and elsewhere around the world. So it's understood by everybody. It's a very easy concept to get a hold of and understand the value of, although it is a technical concept. As the definition of net zero carbon moves from existing buildings back into new construction, it places retrofit in a very good position, as embodied carbon and construction carbon is 50% or more than that. So if you are running into planning, or you are thinking about corporate occupiers, or your investors are beginning to look at your carbon footprint, now is the time for retrofit. And that's why lots of people are moving into this game. My question back to the panel and to the audience today is, retrofit looks very good at the moment because of the decarbonization of the grid. So 10 years ago, the solution to carbon was to knock everything down and build new. very quickly, more quickly than anybody suspected in the UK, the grid got decarbonized, which makes existing buildings now the best bet. However, if we can imagine construction and materials moving towards a pace of decarbonization in the same way as the grid, the question is how long does refurbishment or retrofit continue to look attractive, especially when, as part of net zero carbon, new buildings are required to hit whole building energy targets, which will be very difficult for the existing stock to meet. So we are very much in a fluid position here now. Retrofit, refurbishment looks very good at the moment, better than it has in any time I've looked at buildings. The question is, how does the pendulum swing again, and how do we begin to talk about retrofit and refurbishment in ways which can take that carbon argument and also talk about other things? Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, Rich, I'm not going to let you get away that easily. So that's a fascinating question, and we'll come back to it. But in terms of the retrofit that does need to happen now, in the commercial real estate world, are we ready to do it?
I think so. So you're seeing a lot of buildings now getting stuck at the planning process. New buildings getting stuck. Literally, M&S is probably the most well-known, on Marble Arch here in London. But most projects I'm looking on now are doing whole life carbon analysis that's required from the London plan and required just as best practice anyhow. And as projects are moving along and getting stalled, they are increasingly looking at the option of at least retaining materials or at least retrofitting. Again, David, in a way, there's an appetite for this. And again, investors, planners, will occupiers move towards this? I think this is another interesting question. Okay. There's a lot of skepticism now when you talk to agents on the part of large corporates who have net zero carbon commitments of moving into the kind of buildings that historically they have, i.e. new, glass, towers, steel. It's not there yet, but if you watch what's happening in places like France, where there's now embodied carbon regulation, and Part Z coming here to the UK, no question about it, will the appetite for the traditional kind of new building change towards one which is existing? Absolutely. There are lots of service providers in this space beginning to say that they're only going to work on refurbishment and retrofits. They're making that play because they understand the market drivers.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you very much. We'll come to Ian next.
Thank you. Well, let's ask the question of other carbon-emitting sectors first. Are they ready for decarbonisation? Let's think about grid electricity. Have they got a technology that can deliver zero-carbon electricity at scale at a price we can afford? Yes, they have. Wind turbines going into the sea all around the coast and PV producing electricity at a price and a scale that the country can afford and can meet targets. So let's think about transportation. Is the transportation sector ready for net zero? Well, it's kind of getting there, isn't it? You can go out of here, if you've got enough money in your pocket, you can go out of here and within a few miles of here, you'll be able to buy yourself an electric vehicle at a price which is coming down. It's still expensive, but it's a price that's coming down. There are factories across this country, there are factories across the world, there is media, advertising every night of the week, encouraging you to buy an electric vehicle. You know, something's clearly happened there over the last few years. That sector is there for decarbonisation. Retrofit? I'm not sure that we're there in comparison to those sectors. We don't have big factories making this stuff at a price point that people can afford. We don't have a mass marketing campaign on the adverts in between the football or Coronation Street every night saying, what a great product this is, you really ought to have it, and selling it to us on desirability rather than physics or technical side of net zero. I think we're quite a long way from there, really, when you look at those other sectors. So what are the challenges around the retrofit sector that we need to overcome and get to the place where we are with those other sectors at the moment? So we've got challenges of finance. Who pays for it? We've got challenges of cost. It's too expensive. How do we get the cost down? We've got challenges of desirability. Do people really want this for net zero? A few of us might, because we're kind of geeky and fringe, but it's not mass market stuff right now. We've got a problem of scale. We don't have enough people. We can't do it quickly enough. And we've got a problem of performance. Does it really work? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And people don't always trust it. So those challenges for retrofit are systemic. And what I mean by that is you can't solve one of those challenges without solving all the other ones as well. So we need to look at this holistically. And that is exactly what the other sectors did. Offshore wind, a few years ago, not many years ago, it cost 350 megawatt hours, £350 per megawatt hour to produce. Government and industry came together, relatively modest programme, to industrialise that sector, specifically starting with the end in mind. And that end was less than £50 per megawatt hour, delivered at scale really quickly throughout our seas and exporting to the rest of the world as well. And it was achieved. And what was the magic thing that happened there? Well, a bit of government support, not a lot, £125 million, peanuts compared to the billions that are going into retrofit right now. The secret was industrialisation. And industrialisation can happen over a runway which is multi-year. A runway that leads to that takeoff point where it's cheaper than the fossil fuel alternative. It's more desirable than the fossil fuel alternative. It's safer than the fossil fuel alternative. And it's beautiful. So people really want it. That's what we need to do with retrofit. And that's what the Energiesprong approach is all about. The Dutch, if you were asking this question in the Netherlands, I think you'd be a bit closer to saying, yes, we are ready, because they've got this Energiesprong approach, which has industrialised the approach, and they're doing hundreds of thousands of properties now. And in Germany, something similar, Italy, France. We're not quite there yet. We've made a good start, but we are behind.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I had a complaint on LinkedIn last night from someone who attends Future Build every year, maybe in the room now, I'm not sure, won't name them, that we talk about the same issues every year. Okay, so I guess are we making some progress, or are we actually just stuck in neutral? So Phil, I'll come to you next, and perhaps you could address that point too.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. I'm Phil Mason. I'm the head of regulatory engagement with Trustmark, which is the only government-endorsed quality scheme there is for work that people have carried in and out and around in and outside their home. I know you said be decisive, David, but I'm not sure, and that depends on the day, if I'm honest. And today's a good day. So when I look at the funding that's available via the government schemes, via the government capital schemes, and I look at the obligations that have been placed on energy suppliers under ECO, I don't think we've ever seen so much investment, and that's really encouraging. The parts I'm less sure about is about how the funded sector works, and for a number of the reasons that you've just said as well. In terms of the desire to do it, the funding to do it, I think there's also a lot of moving parts around innovation, around financial protection of innovation, and I suppose, without getting too philosophical at this time of day, I often wonder whether the nation is actually ready to be retrofitted at scale. I'm not sure if the nation is ready to receive yet. When something's funded and it's paid for, I think that's a different matter. I think we've got to mobilise the able to, old-fashioned term really, but the able to pay or the able to pay back markets to drive the desire. You raised a good point around trust. There's been numerous high-profile issues in the past that we shouldn't dwell on because we've moved on from there, but those things last in people's minds for a little bit, for a period of time. So that's why I think I'm unsure. I think there's, on one side of the story, there's a really good story to tell. On the other side, it's better than it's ever been. And I think, David, if you do this type of panel next year, I wonder if I'd say the same thing. I think we're moving year by year progressively, and the interest is changing, and the questions are starting to change. So I am a little bit unsure, but I think we're in better shape than we've probably ever been in reality.
Okay, thank you. That is a very clear answer. Let's move straight to Russell. Are we ready to retrofit at scale, Russ?
Individual parts of our sector, I think we are. Apart from some glaring problems, but I think if the sectors that are moving quickly, I think some of them are actually moving much more quickly than others. Effectively, if we all knew what we were up to, we were all to announce our plans to each other much more less coyly than we do at the moment. I think we'd be in a much better shape to be able to move much more quickly. I'm going to sort of react to some of the other comments as well within my few minutes. The non-domestic sector is able to move much more quickly and I think is pretty ready because there is a financial case to do the thing. There is a market that can deliver and is capable, that is managed and well-resourced with people that know what they're doing every step of the way. 90% of the repair, maintenance and improvement sector in the housing in the UK is based on Mrs. Miggins reacting to a problem. Where there is no planning, there's no building control officer, there's no planning officer directing, and we're all just going, shit, I need to sort it out now! And that's our budget. So we don't have a structure like we do in non-domestic. And we desperately need one. The one thing I think we are missing massively, apart from 450,000 tradespeople to do the job, and we'll perhaps come to that, is a complete lack of leadership. This needs all of those crisis moments and people that are developing stuff really well and all those people that are trying to do the right thing, like Ian and Phil with Trustmark and all the software guys out there that are all doing our thing. We need to be brought together properly to do this. And the first thing we need is a signal from, let's say, government that says we have an intent to retrofit X thousand by this year, and we're going to put money in then, and it'd be a long-term plan so that people can genuinely invest in their own companies, their own organisations, so we all know where we're headed. And on that basis, then colleges will start offering the right courses, and people will know where they can go to transition from their current career to the next career. It's basically all about discussion and opening up and saying this market is so big, we don't really need to be competing with each other that much. It's enormous. So as alluded to, there is something that's brewing called a National Retrofit Hub, which is trying to make that conversation happen. It's not officially launched yet. A few people have said they're willing to put some money into it. Innovate UK is sponsoring it, so it's great. We're still working out how we move quickly and effectively to what I call create the veins and the arteries of an industry which would actually run as a team. Try and make all of the people in this room here are talking about how wonderful they all are, actually talk about how together they can be pretty awesome in a structured way. And over the next few months, we hope to come up with that structure. But ultimately, I think the key one for me is trust. Sarah mentioned it. And I'll give you an example. I retrofitted my own home 20 years ago. My dad was instrumental in helping me do that work. Bless him, he retired a week before I started. He's a fool. And my mum helped us out with tea and what have you. 2 years after I finished the job, my mum strode into my living room and said, Russ, you're never going to believe it. I've just been on a bus with a lady. She says it's a really good idea to do energy efficiency in a home. I think I should do it. And you know what? I'm supposed to be an expert. Well, certainly back then I was. What does it take to get your own mum to believe you? It means there's got to be a momentum where there are a lot of people doing it and saying it and showing it in order for it to happen. Well, I didn't even know this woman was an expert or not on the bus, but she said it. I don't know. So we've got to build a momentum and quickly, and we've got to share good practices, and we've got to share bad practices in a structured way as well, so we know what to avoid. We're terrible at doing that.
Okay, fantastic. And last but not least to Stuart.
Yeah, last but not least. It was my mum that was on that bus, by the way. Yeah. Winding your mum up. I don't really know. I agree with everything everybody said, by the way. I'm sure nobody in here suddenly thought, my God, what have they just said? Because actually, we're all in spaces, we're all occupying, as Russell says, we're all experts in certain sectors, and they all do need to be joined up. I'm going to be controversial and say, are we ready? I'd say, yes, we are ready. I'd say, actually, we're already doing it. Because there's many of you people out here that are actually getting on and doing stuff that's good. Now, if the question was at scale, well, what is the volumetric of scale? How many do we need to do before we say, yeah, we're at that tipping point or we're at this? And as everybody in here said, there's loads of capacity here. I think the key bit I would always say is concentrate on the good. Concentrate on the good quality. If the good quality is what we're all doing, I'm hoping, and delivering that, and you're helping homeowners who are sticking to homes, getting more energy efficient, well done. It's good. We can get there. What I would hate to happen is we all wait till there's this beautiful absolute crystal clear, everything's absolutely beautiful and it all works, because believe you me, the innovation will have moved on before then anyway. So I think it's getting on with it, accepting there's good stuff going on, criticising the bad stuff, calling it out and getting rid of that sort of stuff to educate people that this can be done. Okay, so my half full glass is that yes, we can, but I do agree with everybody's comments that there are certain areas that aren't as strong, and there is some certain stuff that's going on that doesn't need to be allowed to happen. My main issue, and if I may, I sort of get on my soapbox, and David will know me well, I think what we need to do is we need to turn where this funding comes from. And what we're doing at the moment is it's very much measure-led. It's always at the end. It's the government thinking I can tick a load of boxes because I've stuck a load of stuff in people's homes. That's where we've gone hugely wrong. We need to put the consumers back at the beginning, and that's what I think every single person on here said. You need to get them to want this thing. What is it? I want a warmer home. I want a cheaper fuel bill. I want to use less carbon. What are their goals? How are they going to get there? The funding, and those people exist, the advice, the assessment, the medium-term plan, the coordinator, sitting there and advocating for the homeowner. Then we might having a proper debate next year, because I believe if you could do that and tell people how you could save the fuel bills right now, they'd be thinking, yeah, tell me how. They might not have all the money in the world, but I'm delighted the banks and the lenders are starting to sniff around this space, seeing opportunities of lending green mortgages, green extra. So I think that's our biggest problem, and I think that the issue of where it's all started has just been has hoodwinked us, quite frankly, for a little while. We can criticise it, but I would say that even through that mechanism, you're still ending up with something that, if it's done quality, is still a good thing. Someone's house, loft insulation, cavity wall. It might not be the panacea of absolutely everything, because not everybody's got all that money. So the idea of pushing it towards the front of PASS, let's stick to what it says, PASS is a good standard, how to do it well. We need to get back to those basics. But the most important thing is it needs to move towards the consumer, the householder. They need to know why. Why do I need this? And, quite frankly, I don't know about you lot, but do you listen to the government at the moment? Probably not. So if they're telling you to do something, we probably all run the other way, don't we, quite frankly? So I think there's people out there that will advocate for the homeowner to get the goal they want. That exists within the world of PASS. And we can be here forever trying to think about the perfect scenarios, and I think that what we're going to do is get on with it. At 25 million homes, there's an awful lot of activity out there, and we'll get better and better and better. Praise the good, tell the bad off, and that's what I would advocate for today. Soapbox over.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I just want to drill down a little bit into this scale question. Okay, so I'm fed up of a number, and that number is 27 million. I want to stop talking about 27 million because I want it to be 26 million and then 25 million. Okay, so what I would like the panel to address now is what realistically might the scale of proper retrofit be, and I'll define that in a second, over the next 2 to 3 years. Okay, so perhaps in blunt terms, numbers of homes, numbers of businesses, size of market, however we could quantify that. What could the audience realistically expect that scale to be over the next few years? Now, just one bit of context on this. I was at an event recently with the new Minister for Energy Security and Net Zero, and he was ever so proud of the fact that we've taken over the past decade, despite, in his own words, the failure of various policies, we've taken the number of properties at EPC band A to C from 11% to 45%. Now, does that mean we are already retrofitting adequately at scale, or is that a load of lies, damn lies, and statistics? Okay? So who would like to look for a volunteer? Sarah.
Before I kind of try and put a number to things and then have you all come back to me next year and say, you said we were going to have how many done. I think I'm interested in the complaint that you received, David, about talking about the same things. And I'm slightly in agreement with that. It is kind of frustrating. I think everybody here doesn't want to talk anymore about the barriers to retrofit. If you have to read another report on the barriers to retrofit, you might just lose your mind. But it's a shift in our thinking around retrofit that I think needs to happen. Not so much the things, we know what the barriers are, we do know that, but actually it's shifting from cost to value. Like, instead of how much does it cost, what is the value of what we're creating when we retrofit? And it's also the shift away from the individual household. And I should have clarified before I talked about this, my background and my focus is really in the domestic space. So yeah, I'm also a bit tired of that 27, 28 million number. you got to move away from approaching the individual and the able to pay market focus as much as looking at things on a neighbourhood scale, place-based, curated and delivered with the communities that are there. So you move away from the individual to the collective, so that actually what you're doing is engaging people on the issues that matter to them, that allow their places that they live in become a space where you actually have pride again, that you value, that allow you to thrive. Oh, and by the way, your insulation is improved. And by the way, you've saved some carbon. Nobody really, that's not a priority right now. If people cannot pay their bills, people are in massive crisis. They don't, like, how many people are going to be like, do you know what, I really want to save a couple of, kilograms of carbon. That's not it. So we have an obligation with all the skills that we have to move to that bigger scale of thinking and that approach and that level of engagement. And I think then we'll start to see stuff come down away from it being like, oh, we've done this house, this house, that house. That Russell has had so many years trying to deliver that way and actually is moving much more towards the neighbourhood scale side of things. That's where we'll see a bigger lever. We have to look for the bigger levers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just come in? I think it's a brilliant answer. I think there's a place for it all. I'm not denying the fact that you can go to a community-based product, et cetera, but I still think that individual householders, if they're giving a good advice, what that driver is, if you can concentrate on the kilowatts of energy, you'll reduce carbon and cost. By the way, for us all in here a bit geeky, we know that. They don't. But I do think it's a broad church, isn't there? There is no one solution for this. Not let's go and do it on massive scale, do that, like you said, estates and local authorities, the SCH, all those things, they've all got a place. But you've also got to remember there's an awful lot of people out there that don't know their neighbours, don't intertwine into those sectors. They don't even have a mortgage. They're off the radar. They don't move homes. They never have EPCs. They never even talked about this. So again, there's going to be horses for courses, but what does good look like? It still means you've got to sit there and advocate for those people in it. It's just whether it's at scale, like Russell will say, we'll do 1,000 houses together or 10 in a cul-de-sac. Well, one is good as well. It's not the end of the world. I think that's what I would add to that.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, well, Russell, and then I'm going to come to you, Ian, with a specific question. Russell.
I think it would be much more mature of us to actually get our industry organised before we push hard, so that we're doing everything right. And I do actually agree with your point earlier, though. We'll never be perfect, so we do have to start. But at the same point, going with the grain of the way the industry works is going to have amazing traction pretty much straight away. If we can have local intermediaries that can advocate for householders at that moment when they most need that support, it will work. But the thing that we're really bad at in this space is making a good offer to a householder. That offer will be made up of lots of different things, whether it's trusted advice, good design, warranties, guarantees, customer protection, all that kind of stuff. We don't wrap that all up in a decent offer in a consistent fashion. And lots of people, everybody reacts to an offer in a very different way. So that might be a bank-led offer. You're just about to remortgage. The bank is the person that you talk to at the bank will be the person that advocates and will introduce you to a supply chain. It might be somebody at the food bank, given your situation, that they can describe the things that can happen to your building, the value, and they can introduce you to local people and get that done as well, as long as there's somebody like a retrofit coordinator that's looking after the consumer protection side or whatever it might be. So I think in order for us to mobilise all those different models, we need to give everyone a plan.
Okay.
Every house needs a plan, and it needs it quickly. What's the list of things that suit my house right now? And it might take a 20-year plan to get that, but I need a list that suits me and my house, and it will be unique because every house is completely unique. I think if we were to, over the next few years, in brackets, this is never going to happen, but if we were to give everyone a detailed retrofit program that shows how they all get to net zero, that they can tick it off one by one, they can either do it themselves or hand it to the builder or the heating engineer that comes in to fix the boiler that's broken down, and know that they shouldn't miss those things out when they've lifted the floor up.
Okay, fantastic. So in the specific context for the question here, so remember the question was about what scale are we going to see over the next few years, and I'd be really keen to know around Energiesprong and off-site from you, please.
Yeah, so in new build, we've had a target for quite a few years to do 300,000 new build homes a year, and we've never achieved that. But that is what we need to achieve for retrofit, because we've probably got about a decade or a bit more to do this, and we're really talking about 300,000 homes a year on average as a target. And we're not going to do that next year. It's going to have to be incremental growth. But we've all got really quite used to exponential growth and R numbers from the pandemic, haven't we? You need quite a modest change in the R number to begin to drive an exponential growth. And I think with the targets that Russell is talking about, the clear plan, the clear targets, we are going to do this as a nation. The government will be there on the journey. Businesses can be secure to invest now in learning and doing smaller numbers this year. But they can invest in doing those smaller numbers better, and then better again the next year, because they can be confident that that 300,000 home a year volume will come. And I think that's what we need. And you asked the question about A to C on SAP as well. Is that a bit of government baloney? I think you asked. It's not really baloney, is it? But it's not the right measure. You know, SAP isn't designed to map the trajectory to zero carbon. It's for other things. I think what we need to be clear about is the thermal performance of a building, how much energy it actually needs over the course of a year to provide the level of comfort that the householder needs. That's what we need to focus on, and that needs to be sensitive to how much grid capacity there is in the locality, because we don't want to blow the local grid on the coldest night of the year, and we don't want to blow the national grid on the coldest night. So that's quite a strategic discussion there. And the thing to add on to that, I would say, is it can't just be a break-even figure. It can't be just a figure that enables to say, well, this investment kind of breaks even over a period of time. We need to do a bit better than that, because we need to create a business model that enables a company to go to a householder and say, we can make your house look beautiful. We can make your house be comfortable every day of the year for a guaranteed cost that you can afford. And we use the money that you're already paying on your energy bill and your maintenance costs. And that way, people can think, they're saying, I'm having a beautiful new home, retrofitted, comfortable every day, and it's not going to cost me anything, because it's using money that is already being spent. So I would say you need to go a bit better than we might be thinking about to create that business model of savings that can be reinvested to pay the capital that costs an amount.
Okay, fantastic. Phil, I'm going to come to you after Richard, just so you can reflect on a specific question. We have programs like SHDF, we have programs like the Home Upgrade Grant, huge amounts of government funding that are saying are going to be delivered over the next 2 years. So it should be, this question of scale should be really the add sum of all those things plus whatever we can do in the able to pay market. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you how much of that ambition we actually think we're going to see realised. And I think you have good visibility on that from Trustmark. Richard, to you again, through the non-domestic lens, is, how much retrofit activity do you expect to see over the next 2 to 3 years?
If I could just... Is that on?
Yeah.
Thank you. I was just thinking in it, and I spend most of my time, as you know, Dave, in the other part of the world that you just asked me about. But as the answer was going on here, I was thinking I would find it easier to retrofit a portfolio than I would my house. Because I wouldn't know who to go to. I wouldn't know what the trusted products were. There isn't a Tesla, or there isn't a name brand doing this at scale, proven. And yet, when we look at the new construction market, and you look at what Google are doing and Facebook are doing, and some of the companies that aren't even in the property sector, they see that they can do this. They see that there is a market, a commercial market for a green and healthy product, because in other industries, green and healthy outperforms the conventional market unbelievably. And so it's not a question I'm going to be able to answer today, but we're doing a poor job, all of us, of communicating what's the value of a retrofit in terms of what it is for the occupant. And here's where I'll segue into the commercial market here. It always comes down to cost and value, right? And what's driving the commercial market at the moment in terms of retrofit is the perceived value of a low operational energy and a low carbon building, period. What's driving that? ESG. What's driving that? Transparency and public knowledge of what buildings are doing on a whole building scale. There's a running bet that everyone's going to know what commercial property is doing in 5 or 10 years' time in terms of energy performance and whole life carbon, and that will have a value to it. What's the equivalent in residential? Wouldn't you be able to move people to do more of this if they thought that there would be an increased value when it came time to sell their home? Or there might be guaranteed operational savings from the company coming in to do the work, and the payback was real. I don't know the answer to that, but that's where I'd start.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so Phil, on the question of scale.
Okay, I think my concern around the delivery of that could be is the capacity of the supply chain, because we look at people that are already working in the existing schemes, but we've got an entire construction industry that either doesn't understand the opportunity that Retrofit's providing, or chooses not to, or isn't interested. So I think that's a challenge. But one of the thing about numbers, and this might be in slight disagreement with some of us sat here, and I'm not sure I've actually got the answer behind it, but my concern would be if we've got, sorry to use the figure, everybody, 27 million houses, and we've got about 23 years left, give or take, that my maths aren't quick enough to do that, that's about, give or take, it's 1 million homes per annum. Now my concern is that if we don't start to draw it up at a flat line sort of number, what we're going to do is we're going to do all the easy stuff first, and then as we get towards the end, the real problematic measures and dwellings are left, and I think that becomes even more challenging. So it's a bit impractical to start with a flat line and just work it all the way through. You start and you ramp up. So my concern there, I just think, is about the capacity of the supply chain and the interest in the supply chain to become involved.
Okay, Ian's desperate. So
I'm going to answer the question you asked me, and I didn't. So numbers, and coming to your point, Phil. So with the Energiesprong approach in the UK, we've aggregated demand for advanced, innovative, net zero retrofit using industrialised components with performance and cost guaranteed long term in a 1,500 home contract. It's not a lot, 1,500 homes. We've delivered 170 of those to date around the country, different archetypes. We've just contracted and started on site another 180, not far from here in Barking and Dagenham and Sutton and Nottingham and down in the southwest. It's a small fraction of that small number of 1,500. But the result has been we've got 4 new industrialised components that have come out of the supply chain responding directly to that market. 2 of them are fabric. So instead of sending people out in a white van to render and EWI and having skilled labour like plumbers and electricians on site, doing stuff in the rain, in the winter, these are components that are made in a factory that can be quickly installed on site with a minimal disruption, that have got a chance to be really well quality managed so that the company can guarantee their actual real life performance long term, and that we've got enough people to install them. And we've got a box with all the M&E kit in it. A heat pump, a battery store, an inverter for the PV, smart monitoring controls and ventilation all in a box. So that's much cheaper to do in a factory than it is with people coming out of white vans on site. Already, a contract of 10 homes has reduced that M&E retrofit cost from about £25,000 per home to about £12,000 or £13,000 per home. So that is the power of the supply chain responding with innovation if the right messages are put out there.
Okay.
We don't have to do hundreds and hundreds of thousands to get to this nirvana. We can start with many, many small steps taken quickly and build up exponentially from there, and the market will respond.
Okay. So I'm taken with this idea of we don't have the Tesla from Rich. So I'm going to ask in a moment whether actually we do have the Teslas, because I think Ian's just described one. And I know with Retrofit Works and the Carbon Co-op, we do have some one-stop shops that we said, I think someone a minute ago said there's nowhere to go. There are places to go. Perhaps no one knows about them, or perhaps they're not scaling. But before we come on to that, I'd like to invite questions from the floor. Are there? Well, there's a couple of hands. So we'll take both. Yep, we'll take all three of these questions. If you could just introduce yourself and...
My name is Melissa Merriweather. I'm a retrofit coordinator, and I've been working on private homes and also on social housing projects. I'm Trustmark registered. I'm registered with Elmhurst. I would say the main thing that clients are looking for from me is something they can trust, and hopefully I'm giving very high quality advice for them. I think there's two things that haven't been touched on, and I'd love to know what people think about this. One of the biggest problems I've got right now is there is no planning playbook for retrofit. And a lot of very well-meaning clients on my side want to do things, and they're going to be hindered at planning level. And I know what the reasons are for that, but I also think that right now what I see is a very itty-bitty kind of process going on in a lot of different boroughs where there's nothing very collective, you know.
Okay.
And if we're going to talk about scale, I think that's really important. The other thing I would just do as a throwaway comment is that it's very expensive to get certified and qualified and go through all the standards and everything. I think it's important to be very highly qualified, but training a team in the last year to do that actually was not financially viable. I had to let people go after a while. So there are some barriers to people getting into this industry. We want to do it. We want to be out there giving advice and helping people reach these really good solutions. But financially, it's really kind of a tricky proposal.
Okay, thank you. We'll take two more questions, and then we'll put them all to the panel in one go. So there was a question here.
Hi there, my name's Nicola Kench. I've got a company called Groundswell Ecosystems, which deals specifically with populist and people-led sustainability education for all and lobbying, everyday and systemic steps to an eco-positive groundswell. And I'm responding particularly to your concerns about the ground-level awareness issues. Not only that, but to the systemic industry levers for the kind of critical mass change. Now, because I'm a kind of a self-taught interloper and I come from a background of education, I always preface everything that I say with my full card, which is that I'm not an industry professional, but I ask stupid questions. That's my job. So my question is this, because I'm currently, in 2020, I audited all of the London Council housing strategies, because somebody's got to do it. There's 33 councils. You literally do a search on the PDF, all right? Only one of those councils had a systemic approach to sustainability in the built environment with vast budgets. Okay, for example, Kensington and Chelsea had a budget of 300 million in 2020, okay? That is for the repair, the regeneration, all right, and the supply of social housing, all right? Now, we know that the carbon crisis and the fuel poverty crisis hits society's hardest working, most poor people the hardest, and they'll end up paying for critical mass change. So if we're going to have a dignified approach, all right, which is financial dignity for all from the ground up, we are going to have to look at how do we decarbonize social housing in an affordable manner with government money. Now, my question is this, is I'm busy actually re-auditing the London Council housing strategies right now, and in fact, the take-up is extraordinary, and I'm looking right across West London, and really now there are new targets. Energiesprong is coming up. You know, there's this amorphous passive house principle situation, and I know that Letty is currently working on a I'm contributing to that, how many, how deep project. But my question is this, I believe that if you look at the budget for social housing or or council-led housing across London over a 5-year period, it's on average 10 billion. All right? And I looked, if you look at the kind of figures that you spoke about for the grid mobilization, which were tiny comparison to that, I'm still of the belief, and I want to be corrected, I want to be told if I'm wrong or right. I'm still of the belief that with the government funding and with systemic strategies in council housing, you can get the kind of industry, you can get the kind of playbook with industry innovation, all right, and with mass scalable retrofit, along with government funding in local policy. Now, I know that there is not a systematic approach.
Okay.
I know that there's somebody working on it, but my question to you is that a reasonable recourse for the kind of industry stimulus as a way in, or am I off the ballpark?
Okay, thank you very much. I think there were about 5 questions there, but we'll try. Thank you very much. There was one final question here, please. They relate, don't they? There's a systemic approach in local authority leadership. Okay.
Yeah, Alex Thomas from Worcester Bosch. Just want to ask if we think that the industry may be too impatient and getting a gradual approach about having markets to maybe mature. I think certainly the conversations within this exhibition is that we want the gold standard immediately. I get we're in a climate emergency and we need to act quickly. But I think maybe there could be an opportunity missed. And I think I'm going to talk about the emotional side of things when it's in regards to heat and heat in homes. Is that, and Russell talked a little bit about distressed purchases and panic. There is 1.67 million gas boilers installed every year. And if we take 50% of distressed purchases, and I need in this weather a boiler that goes down beyond economical repair, what do I do in regards to the renewable sources or the low carbon? I need that product installed. And so I would say, is there possibly a solution for a halfway approach? Should the government be considering hybrids to encourage someone to get on to that lower carbon solution, and so keeping the expectation of the consumer in a gradual approach that is affordable, not just social private homeowners, but social housing as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's obviously a key part of the debate, because the government's heat and building strategy very much leans towards that approach. So let's start with that, and then we'll come back to the local authority playbooks and how they could work more collaboratively and systematically, if that's okay. So the question to address now is, should we be doing more on heat effectively, potentially at the cost of fabric? Sarah?
I'm still swirling around the several people mentioning a systemic viewpoint and understanding that, and the impatience bit. And I think you're right, actually. We held panel discussion on Tuesday specifically about what we think, what do we mean when we're talking about taking action, and are we all actually sitting in our comfort zone of talking about taking action? And actually, if we rush in doing things, we have this sort of feeling amongst us, we are the solution makers, we can do that thing, let's come in, I've got the silver bullet, we want to see it. And actually, we have to step back all the time and wonder, what system are we buying into? Like, what are we replicating? What are we serving these bigger needs? We have an obligation to step back and make sure that we're not just taking a system that's failed everybody thus far, putting it in the hands of another set of delivery or operatives and getting the same output again. So I think, on that sort of high level approach, the systemic issue, approaching the systemic concerns, and that leads right the way up to moving away from destructive, degenerative practices into regenerative ones, which actually does need the voice of the community and the people, and the emotional side that you talk about. It's really important and isn't spoken about nearly enough, because that's sticky and messy, and we all have to have feelings, and nobody likes to do that. So yeah, I've gone off on a rant there. I do think we do need to focus on fabric, actually. I think we do. I think we absolutely have to focus on fabric as a priority. I know that we also need to be able to generate heat. I think jumping into, you could heat a tent. This is something that you said, I think, Russell. You could heat a tent with a heat pump, but it'll cost you a packet. You don't want to be throwing in the new technology when it's not ready for it. And we know how to do the fabric bit. We do know how to do that. And I'm going to sort of just come back to where we kind of started about all of the knowledge that exists. There is no one size fits all. That's right. There is no need to corner a particular spot of the market because the urgency and demand is so huge. That's also right. So actually it is about creating the consensus space whereby no matter your entry point for retrofit, you can go to, let's call it the National Retrofit Hub. We'll see how that evolves. I'm all for it as a concept. And so that you go there and you understand, what do I need to do next? And I've kind of stayed on the systemic height level on it because I think it would be remiss of me to be reductionist about saying, actually, yes, let's just do heat. No, let's go fabric. It's really, really complex, but we really have to focus on reducing the demand in the first instance, because you reduce the demand for the need for energy. You also hit other things like people's comfort, people's security, protection from price volatility, all of that.
Okay, yeah.
Just quickly building upon that, I think as Russell said, we need a plan. Each house needs a plan. If you had a medium-term plan and the distressed call comes in and somebody picked it up and said, hey, what am I doing next? They can be an interesting conversation taking place, can't there? Now, if they need it tomorrow and they need to put something in that's a hybrid or whatever, they've considered the implications on carbon, cost, kilowatts, etc. Now, quite frankly, you should be putting fabric in first and then you put a smaller boiler in and you lose less energy in the house. We all know that. But at that point in time, they might not be able to do that. But if the education and the medium-term plan exists, each homeowner has it. So I come back to the beginning. If you haven't got a bleeding clue, you're just talking to somebody who says, I'm going to stick one of these on your wall. It's about that big. Thank you very much. I'm out. That's unfortunately where we've lived in these silos. So it does come back to, I think, what Russell said. If we can get a plan, get some direction, and then find good people to talk to, then you would end up having good solutions. And that's, as you know, everybody, there is no one fits, like you said, but fabric first, use less energy in the building. Simples.
Okay, we'll come to Ian.
I think every home, every archetype and every home does need a plan. And that plan needs to be sustainable for that home and that archetype, but also for the whole country when this is done at scale. And I think that leads us to a place of, yes, we do have to do fabric as the leading measure to make sure that the heat equipment is demanding a small enough amount of energy to be sustainably providable and sustainably affordable. So I don't think there's any getting away from that. I don't know about hybrid solutions. I just don't know. I know it doesn't all have to be done in one go, but doing it in one go has a lot of advantages. And certainly having that plan behind it is really important. So Retrofit's got 3 different components, hasn't it? It's got that fabric, the insulation, the demand reduction. It's got the heat provision for the heat demand that's left. It's the equipment. And it should have generation and storage in there as well. And each 3 of those elements respond very differently financially. So we are used to this stress purchase. Your boiler breaks, you don't think about it, you've got to buy a new one and you install it. So we're used to putting our hands in our pockets and paying for that. We're kind of used to PV and generation and storage, some of us, because there's kind of a business case there. It's going to pay back over half the time, at least, of the lifetime of the panels. So in the householder's mindset, or some of us, there's a invest, save, long term. Fabric, there isn't. Generally, people don't think about, oh, I'm going to invest in fabric improvement and it's going to pay me back. Because people never really know whether it has or not, because it might have been because the weather was hotter or colder, or I left the window open more often. And it's a different financial argument. And I think that's something we've got to crack for the whole house. And bringing the whole house solution together, I think, can help businesses provide that Tesla solution. At the moment, the Tesla isn't there because it costs too much.
We're coming to the Tesla, so just hold that thought. Now we're coming to Russ next, but just, no, having known you for a long time, Russell, the consumer first, the customer first piece. So with building that trust that we're talking about, this question of heat first or fabric first, what's the right answer in your view for them?
In that particular situation, you've got to give them some heat, but it's the opportunity that's the key thing. You're creating some hassle They've got to accept some hassle to get the problem solved. What do you do at that moment in the shortest amount of time for the minimum amount of cost to A, give them some heat, and B, move a little bit further towards net zero? Without that plan, you've got absolutely no hope, because nobody really, you haven't got time for a retrofit coordinator to come out. They're stacked up with work already. You've got to wait for them to come in, put the plan together. Oh, right, okay. Before I put that new boiler in, I need to put a little bit of insulation behind it, so that I'm going to do the internal wall insulation in 10 years' time, but I'll make it fit. We haven't got time for any of that. We need the plan now. It doesn't have to be something that's massively detailed. As long as the householder has a strategy, the 10 things that have to go into this house eventually, then the heating engineer can work with it. What we, of course, need is the army of heating engineers to be trained to recognise these things and not to dismiss it. The amount of whole house plans I've written over the years where a builder said, don't worry, mate, put that down. It might cost you a few quid, but I know what I'm doing. My dad showed me how to do it. We need to professionalise every sector of our sector to be able to recognise that this grand plan, it's a huge, not a serious skills deficit, it's a knowledge deficit. I think we need to get over that very quickly. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money, could be done on YouTube. As long as we prove that people have watched that YouTube video, I think whatever. But there needs to be that plan for every person, not just the house.
That's loud and clear. So last word on this one, unless you've got something to add, Phil. I'm going to come to Richard. Now, is that story around heat and fabric different, in your view, in the non-domestic sector?
I get a little bit worried. There's lots of things we talked about here. The cost of things, the urgency, the lack of knowledge, and so forth. All I would say about retrofit and the cost in the commercial sector, which I've seen over decades, I'm seeing it again now, EPCs were mentioned a bit earlier, is if you're looking at the amount of carbon and you're talking about embodied carbon and you're talking about on-site and you're talking about property by property, it gets very difficult. This is the Tesla image again. We're not retrofitting all cars at the tailpipe. We're doing it centrally. And so it's just a question for I'm not sure that the solution to this is a one house or one commercial building at a time. I'm not even sure that on-site is the best bet a lot of the time. What really is driving change in the industry, in the commercial industry, is the desire on the behalf of commercial landlords and tenants to go after REGO and RGGO backed electricity. Problems all with that as well, I understand that. But that from a carbon point of view and that from a financial point of view is going to beat the inconvenience, the cost of a one building by one building solution all the time. And I don't know whether there's the opportunity to do that in the residential sector, but that kind of wider thinking about the solution might be worthwhile.
Okay, thank you very much. Final word to Phil.
Right, it's a strange final word because we've heard about Russell's mum on the bus with Stuart's mum. Well, my mum was there as well. And I am going somewhere with this, and my mum wasn't talking about retrofit. She was a bit more concerned about marrying off her overweight, bald-headed son, so he wasn't living at home at 50. So I took up village cricket. Not because I wanted to take up village cricket, but because I thought it was good for my image as a much younger man. But what I actually found out is, because I wasn't particularly good at cricket, even people in the opposing teams would give me advice about how I should bowl and how I should bat. And there was a knowledge exchange. And I think we've got a construction industry and a heating industry going into people, this is the point I'm trying to make seriously, a construction industry and a heating industry going into people's homes, and they're not quite sure what to say or what to do because the knowledge exchange and the examples aren't there. And I suppose this leads back to your National Retrofit Hub. There's a place to exchange knowledge so a consumer can get some idea about what happens next at quite a high light level as well, because we need to drive the education so people can make the right choices as well. It's a strange way of introducing it, but I hope you can see the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, I think we've addressed that one comprehensively. So let's come to this question of, to summarise and paraphrase, I think it's around local authority leadership, navigating the planning system, and we've talked a lot about retrofit plans. So how do retrofit plans, which we clearly need at scale, and the planning system need to come together? I'll ask for a volunteer.
Yeah, Well, here's a plug. If you haven't been over to the materials stage and the Architects Climate Action Network, we have collectively pulled together a conservation area retrofit toolkit, which is a way of looking at conservation areas in particular, but through the lens of identifying on a more granular level where the retrofit opportunities are. Oh, there we go. David's got a copy. You can buy it over there. We are an entirely voluntary network, so if you want to buy it, that's excellent, because that comes out of our voluntary coffers. Anyway, that aside, thanks, Russell, for reminding me. I think on the local authority bit as well, I think I can only just speak about this from my experience with local authorities. Like industry, which is reflected here, where there is a great goodwill to share, local authorities really also want to share knowledge and learning. 10, 12 years of austerity has prevented local authority departments from being able to have the time or the energy or the resource to talk to each other. So there's a desire, they're kind of pushing against a stream of what's available to them in order to collaborate. Now, I have seen this happen, and again, this is why these sort of spaces for convening best practice, knowledge share, doing it for your borough, but also making it available to other boroughs. That is happening. It's happening through Westminster. It's happening through the London Council's plan. It's happening in Enfield and Waltham Forest. It's lovely. You love to see it. It's great. You want to see that collaboration coming through, but it's pushing against a system that should be supporting it. So again, it needs more backing. I mean, the more that we're all talking, the more kind of, and I'm trying not to be so cynical, but the more angry that I'm getting that there isn't better leadership in this space with a national retrofit strategy. Like, where is that? Where is that support? It's criminal that we do not have one. It's just, and it's such a good news story. Whatever flavour of government you are, it's a winner. We have to see more of that. It's really frustrating. All these people who are here have so much knowledge and really want to share it, and it's just, God, what are we doing talking to each other? There's a huge industry out there who don't have the time or the energy to come and have these conversations, and yet all this knowledge is available to them. So, I do want to just, call out more of that collaboration, and that's where it will happen. And then eventually, when the followers, who are our governments, instead of the leadership that they need to be, might step in and put their weight behind it.
Can I?
Planning, a little anecdote on planning. So we've done projects in, I guess, about 13 different local planning areas, I think. And the extreme, they were all different responses. The one extreme was the director of planning phoned me up and said, "This is blooming marvellous. Could you do some more of it? It's all permitted development. Please get on with it, but I'd really like to come to the ribbon cutting ceremony, if you don't mind." The other extreme was a nearly 100-year-old housing estate, council housing estate, not very far from here, where the local planning department made us put in a planning application for each single individual property. There's 26,500 homes on that estate. 26,500 planning applications? I don't think so. So planning is a big issue, and I think a government that put a planning framework in place that had a presumption for zero carbon retrofit would really help us all. And the other really interesting question you asked was about that 300 million, did you say, that has been spent on maintenance and repair of social housing? I think you've hit the nail on the head. There's the money to do retrofit. There's the money to provide that runway of work for an industry to evolve and industrialise on. And you add to the thousands that each individual household is spending on energy, you put the savings on energy together with the savings on maintenance together, and you put that over 30 years, backed by a guarantee. We don't need any government grant. We can just do this. I think that's where we have to aim for. That's an end. We're not there now, but we have to actively create these business cases that make it work for people and make it easy.
If it's okay, I'm just going to pick up on something. I think government, and if there is anybody from government, I apologise. I'm not a politician, so I say how it is. Look, it's easy for them to say, I've got a pot of money, what am I going to do? I'm going to give it a local authority, and they've got the problem to deal with. That's what's going on. All the local authorities all signed, there's a climate emergency, we better sign it. What does it mean to anybody? I don't know yet, we'll figure that out later. We just better sign it because it looks good. So I think what I would say in that sector is if you looked at RSLs, Registered Social Land, we've got so many acronyms in this sector, they've been doing this stuff for 25, 30 years, right? If you took their stock, they have stock asset management systems. They understand what's going on. They have plans of how to improve them over time. We work with them all. There's thousands and thousands. If I was buying an energy efficient home, I'd buy an RSL house because they've been told for a long, long time they need to be better. For what everybody talks about SAP and EPCC and stuff, that's what made them do it. It was this regulatory requirement to make them better. And it's worked. So what is it that the RSLs did that the local authorities don't do? Exactly. So go and look what good practice looks like, and then talk to this new hub here, find the information. We know how to solve it. It's about getting some good data together for those properties. And it all comes back to, again, data. I know this sounds mad. The plan that me and Russell will bang on till we're probably gone and on that bus together, when we're a bit older, is that data needs to be available to the homeowners. At the moment, it's locked away, it's disappeared, it's in the ether. EPC data, can't touch it, it's owned over here. I can't do that because it's in over here. It's the homeowners' information, for heaven's sake. If you don't free that up to you guys to enable you to make good decisions, we're all blowing in the wind. Because it's just, well, we better send somebody else out to find out what's going on today. So that would be my high horse moment.
Just to say, I completely agree with everything Stuart just said. To add, on a daily basis, me and my team, we give local authorities, social landlords, a target to aim for by using their data to be able to model the least cost route to getting to whatever target they're aiming for. One particular challenge that they have is that they have this interim SAP-C target by 2030, which actually gets in the way. It's a problem, actually, rather than a nudge in the right direction, because if they focus on that and then they get to 2031, great, right, net zero now, they might have done quite a few things that are in the way of net zero. They need that long-term thinking in order to be motivated to do this in a smart way. But just to roll this on a second, if you were to give a net zero strategy or plan or a target to an asset manager and a program manager, they wouldn't really know how to implement that in the right way because they are panicking on mould. The current panic is mould, of course, quite rightly. And then we've got the Grenfell fallout. Oh my God, we've got to deal with all those issues, quite rightly. The complexity in all this is really, really difficult. However, every house has a least cost route to get into net zero if you install everything in the right order. But you've got to have the long-term horizon in order to put that thinking in place to make that work in the right way. We're working with a landlord in the Northwest, and we've worked extremely hard on what they would do for their 7,500 houses, what it will take to get to net zero. We've identified some optimization in their program that could knock millions off of their cost. If you were to put that millions in saving together with the fees they're paying to lawyers for tenants that are taking them to court because of their poor condition, you've suddenly got a budget that's been freed up. Because you're being smart and you're being proactive and you're prioritising the right people and you're just getting on with it. But this complexity needs to be worked out. We're developing software to help us with that. But the bottom line is there are things you can do right now just by talking to people and optimising things in the right way before the tools come.
Thanks, David. I think it's an interesting thing from the commercial perspective that the biggest driver, or an audience of the biggest driver for net zero, is in fact planning authorities. So all of our discussion around net zero carbon comes from the GLA. There's no regulation requiring net zero carbon in buildings at the moment, except for maybe building regulations if you want to draw it that way. But all of the work in net zero carbon is originally driven by the GLA, and all of the push towards retrofit on new projects now is being pushed back by planning authorities. It's the most difficult hurdle for a new development to get over. So maybe they're not exerting the power that they should be doing, but certainly they have power to do it in other areas of development.
Okay. I think we've exhausted that one, I think. So we've talked about the need for Teslas. Now, I am absolutely clear in my mind that we have Teslas. Okay? I know I run one. It's called the Retrofit Academy. We had a Tesla in training. I know, well, that's my view. Retrofit works, feels like a Tesla to me. Needs to be scaled up, people-powered retrofit, and some of the calibre of talent that's coming into the sector to disrupt and shake up what we're doing is incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's moved on so much over the last year. So I think we've got the Teslas. Do you agree And what do we need to do to help scale those up? Ian? Oh, Energiesprong's a Tesla.
I don't think we quite have Teslas. What we've got is Tesla prototypes. And prototypes cost a blooming fortune. And that's where we are, I think, at the moment with Retrofit. What the Tesla really is, and let's not use the Tesla. There's the Renault Zoe. Let's think, there's a lot of different models of electric vehicles out there that are nearly affordable. They're not far off, and they will be in a few years' time. And they're not just affordable or nearly, they're trusted. Because they're made by brands that everybody knows. They're backed by advertising campaigns on the TV every night that are playing to our commercial aspirations, our economic animal behaviour in purchasing. They've got service networks and guarantees and warranties and all of that, and people have got used to just trusting cars that they just work if they're made by big companies. And I don't think we quite have that. So I think we're a few years back from that, but I think you're right that we do have some of the prototypes out there that can be scaled, and the key to scaling and cost reduction is industrialisation. And the key to achieving industrialisation is certainty about multi-year market, and that's what we need government to help us with. Make that early market, and then they don't have to subsidise retrofit forever and a day. And that's just what's happened with grid electrification, zero carbon grid electrification. Doesn't need a subsidy. It's just what's happened with electric vehicles. It needs a bit of a subsidy, although it's been taken away, but it'll nearly be there. And at the moment, we're completely 100% almost subsidy driven in retrofit. That's what's stimulating the market right now, and we need to get away from that. So I'd caveat that.
Fair enough. Russ?
If I just describe in a nutshell, the first scheme in the UK to ever be self-sustaining without any external funding for retrofit, and it's the Cosy Homes Oxfordshire cooperative-led model. It's cooperative from a couple of angles. One, the supply chain all owns the model, which is weird. And they still think it's weird, but it's working. It's also led by community groups that represent the community. They are the people that are standing up at the farmers' markets with the flyers, branded Cosy Homes Oxfordshire, and they're all part of it. They're owners of that co-op too. So you're starting to touch on what trust is. Trust is three things. The first is rigour. Within the model, within the commercial model, we're showing people what things will be like, the value they will realise, the benefits, and it's delivered by someone, number two, who's authentic. They are local. It's somebody that it's one of them. People turning up on your doorstep and selling you something they don't believe in is where quite a lot of this industry stops dead, and we've talked about this before. And then the final one is, basically you're representing the homeowner. The third item of trust is that you have to represent them and their view and what they want. The world of eco, grant funding, is about the person making the offer and what's best for them, not necessarily what's best for the homeowner. We need to cut through all of that. So the Tesla model will be able to achieve those three things, in my view. Now, the Retrofit Works model is great, and it's starting to plant in different parts of the country, but it really needs the proper, if we're going to go down the Renault route, the va-va-vroom to really make it work properly. Ultimately, we haven't quite got there yet, and I think it's because the finance isn't there. Finance companies are desperate to move into this space, and they've got money sitting there depreciating every day through inflation, and they can't deploy it because they don't trust the models. So one of the reasons we have this hub is so we can all sit around and say, oh, come on, tell us what you really want. We're kind of ready. We got the bits. I agree with Stuart. We just need those conversations to really make it work. And I think one of the things, just to leave you, I think 55% of all buyers of new cars in the UK right now use a PCP deal. They don't buy cash. They don't take a loan. It's a PCP because it's about disposable income. If we turn the model, and I think you're doing quite a lot of work in this space, actually, so that people know that, okay, well, somebody else is going to take the risk from me. They're going to put the warranties in place. They're going to take the finance. They're going to pay for my retrofit, and I'm going to pay them a certain amount per month. That's the market coming forward.
Interesting. Great. Fun. Yeah, Sarah?
I'm just going to go somewhere slightly different with this, because whilst I do agree that there is a need and a role for the market and for developing the Teslas and the pieces that are going to really save all of this. I'm going to quote. Who am I going to pick from? Indy Johar, I think, is where I'm going to go. Indy Johar says, and this is a science-based fact, we don't have the hydrocarbon credits to mine the materials to do all the retrofit. So I think we need to come back out a little bit and remember that all of the work that we're trying to do is set within a closed system, which is the planet, okay? And we now have more human-made mass on the Earth than living biomass. Okay, we have done that to the planet. And I think it's really important that we remember, whilst we are off looking for solutions and the creation of more and new and what's going to replace this, is to remember another person's good work here, Duncan Baker-Brown, somewhere earlier on I saw him, who, and ACAN again, to plug them on the circularity, on the notion of how do we move away from exponential growth in any sector back towards, to quote somebody else, because why would I create new information when it's already out there? Retrofit Hub, convening, sharing knowledge. Kate Rayworth, Donut Economics. If you haven't read that, we have to do that. And that is essentially, we cannot exceed planetary boundaries on the one hand, whilst also ensuring that humanity doesn't fall below the level of what it is needed to survive. We have to be in the donut. And that is a big shift away from what we're doing. So I'm just putting a cautionary line in the sand to say, yeah, we do need to do all of this, but we absolutely have to remember the system that we are sat within, because we don't want to just replicate the Industrial Revolution again over here with the same output, because we don't measure full cost. And we need to also build that into this. We have to measure full cost.
Okay, fantastic. I'm just going to use these last few minutes we have to get for us one final question from the audience for May. Yeah, the lady here. With the mic.
Sorry. I live in a very lovely, very leafy London suburb, all right? And like a lot of my neighbours, I live in quite a substantial 4-bedroom home. And I'm smack bang in the middle of the able to pay market, okay? We've talked a lot about local authorities, etc. I am struggling, and I've deep retrofitted my own home, but I can't see any of my neighbours doing the same. These are people who are able to pay. What's in it for them? They don't want the hassle. They live busy lives, they're working, they've got lovely homes. You've got to try and convince them that it's worth doing what I've done. And I have to say, I'm struggling, and I'm going out to my community, and I'm not getting a lot back from them. There's nothing in it for them. They can ride out a time when their energy bills are high. Yeah? They can pay for a while, the government's subsidising it a bit. It's not worth it for them. And I can't convince them at the moment that coming off their gas supply and electrifying their heating is worth it, because of it costs you more. They know that. So, and I'm not alone, there's a lot of people in our country out there who are living they've got the big house, they've got the substantial carbon footprint.
Could I have a go?
There is a real problem here to getting this off the ground, because the cost and the hassle are massive barriers.
Okay.
Do you mind if I just come back? Just very quickly. I've spoken about this on a number of occasions. You've ever seen me speak. It's easy. There's a carrot, there's a stick, and there's a big tambourine, and that's the way that everybody used to talk about this. You either give people a carrot and an incentive to do it, and he's saying it doesn't work for these guys, then you need to regulate. You need to actually ensure that these homes become better over time. It's worked in the private sector, in the rental sector. It's worked in the social landlord sector by giving people targets to achieve. That's regulation. So the government needs to be frank and give a plan to everybody. The tambourine is noise, by the way. It's educating and advising. And when those people understand the fuel bills keep going and going and going, and they're leaving their grandkids with a polluted planet, maybe they might. We don't know yet. But if you had the regulation in place that enables them to think, or incentivise carrot. Why are council taxes? Why are they not related to how much carbon? We've talked about this for years. They're just dodged. No No person's going to say, well, if you produce more carbon or you pollute, you should pay more. It's just we won't do it with houses because we don't want to lose 25, 50 million votes. So it's about political direction, ambition, and setting the targets, but use all three. It won't work for everybody, but it will work for the right people if you get it right.
Okay. The problem you're describing is a very real one. I'm going to ask Russell to be the only person to reflect again on it, because you've been so heavily involved in an Able to Pay initiative. I'd like to know if what the lady is describing there is what you're finding on the ground. But the final question I'm going to ask you each to very briefly comment upon is the one about, we have a new government next year. We don't know what colour it's going to be. There's a strong indication it may be red, but we'll see. What would your biggest ask of that incoming government be to help enable what we've talked about doing today? So if you could answer both at once for us, and then we'll move on.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, it's the problem. Because if householders aren't energised to want to do this, then the supply chain won't either, because nobody's asking, they're not going to get trained, and then they're not going to professionalise, and all the things that we were talking about today. I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
No.
So, we've just started crunching the numbers on our house, and my energy use is right down, but my bills aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah? And, the bottom line is there. And for the people that live in these lovely big houses, unless there is, a lot of them have got the Tesla.
Sure.
They've got the plug-in car in the front, but they're not thinking about their energy use.
I think the underused weapon at the moment is the tambourine. When we launched Cosy Homes Oxfordshire, we had 400 people signed up to spend at least 400 quid on a whole house plan within 2 months. But we couldn't service them all because we didn't have enough people to do the plans. And then we didn't have enough people to do the work that they wanted to spend on average £25,000 on. So that 400 people wanted to spend £25,000 straight away. That's a market. So it's there. The issue we've got is building that momentum up in the first place. That tambourine is required. We need to spend money on PR and marketing. And those people standing up at the church and telling everybody what their house is like, opening their doors to let people in to feel the comfort. That's what happened with my house. I live next door to a lumber yard, and that at 6:30 in the morning we heard the beep of the forklift truck. You couldn't hear that. That's a simple thing. That's one of the things that gave me a massive benefit. And you need to tell the stories. So we need to get over that hump to try and create the cultural change within our industry and within householders' perceptions of what this is. So they think, I fancy one of them. It might be a bit of hassle, but, my boiler's being changed, my kitchen's coming out. Happy to spend 50 grand on the kitchen. While it's out, I'm going to do the insulation on the floor, put the insulation on the wall, because if I go back to do it later, because the government's going to come on with their stick, it's going to cost me 3 times as much to do that bit of insulation. If I do it now, it's going to cost me a very small amount. So it ain't easy. Cosy Homes Oxfordshire was an absolute pain in the butt to get moving, but it's there. And it's still creaking, but it's profitable. We need that push now. We need local authorities to get behind it, everyone to get behind it, but we need those stories to convince people it's worth it.
Okay. All right. We are pretty much out of time. So I'm going to challenge you to answer the question around what do we want this incoming government to do in one sentence. So I know that's a tough thing to do on the spot. You're ready, Phil. Great. Go.
You've heard about my cricketing exploits as a much younger man. Thank you. And that was about information, which became knowledge. I think we need an information campaign so people can understand, because we understand what retrofit means, and I think we've got a starting point. You go out and talk to the general public, and I don't think they have the first clue in the majority of cases.
Great. Fantastic. Sarah?
That plus, for the love of God, improve standards and give us the national retrofit strategy. In fact, we'll give you the national retrofit strategy. You implement it.
Both of those plus, yeah. I think they call it the building passport. I think I've heard that expression. Give the data, the information to the homeowners. I've said it 3-4 times today. They will be able to make good decisions if they speak to the right people.
Fantastic.
I'm not going to add, because I think they've said the right things. I would just say vote for a government with a spine, please.
It's Ian.
I would say let's have a plan. as you said. I would say let's look at what's worked in other countries, which is what we've done, and the Dutch are doing some good stuff. It's working. It's called Energiesprong. Let's do something like that here. And I would say to government as well, when their backbench MPs say, how on earth do I sell this on the doorstep? I'd say the offer to households is a warm home, comfortable every day, for a guaranteed cost that you can afford. I would say that's the objective that we've got to have, and that's what government should set up in stimulating an industry to develop and achieve that.
Okay, thank you. And the last word to you, Richard.
Thank you, David. Public database, whole building energy, every commercial building, every dwelling, consumption per meter squared, along with carbon output.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was a tough gig to give you all at the end there, but you did very well. That's the end of this session. Thank you so much to what's a brilliant panel. It's been a fascinating debate. Thank you for your input. That brings an end to the seminar programme for Future Build 2023. It's been very worthwhile from our perspective, and I hope it has been for yours. And we look forward to seeing you next year when we will have delivered amazing things. Thank you very much.